Greetings and salutations. I wanted to do another update on how I work with gouache. Now, the gouache I use is Holbein. I usually go for a wash. It's usually a warm tone wash. You can do whatever wash you want to do, but this is how I usually do it because I just really love warm tone things and it really makes it pop out, so that if I still have missing spots throughout the end of the painting, it won't be completely white as the paper. Now, I don't usually do backgrounds, but when I do, I color the background first so it can help me determine how the placements of the figure, the subject, will be. After that, I go with the skin, and weirdly enough, I start with like the blushy parts, the more redder parts of the face, and then I go over with the lighter part. Over time, I make it lighter and lighter because I'm like, oh, I made it too dark or I made it too bright, so I have to change it. Sometimes it's too yellow, sometimes it's too red. I like to go through with I think a brilliant orange and a lemon yellow, or whatever yellow you have, and hints of like a flaming red if it's too orange or yellow, whatever the case may be. And I go over with that over and over and over and over again. Now, I don't use black, but I do use a variance of like green and red, so it makes this really rich, like dark but not really dark black color. It alludes to it, but it is the darkest pigment that I will put within my paintings. Now, I do the same thing with what I did with the hair. I just blop the base color. It doesn't even have to be a like really thick pigment, just like a light wash. I went back with the face, of course, because like I said, I was gonna go back with the face because I have trouble to my completion. And I went back with just more of the base color of the brilliant orange, and then I just slapped it on his cheeks and his nose and his ears and wherever else, you might find blush. And then I went back with the hair. Now that we had everything done with the base of things, I started doing the details. I think a lot of people start to do the details at the beginning, which creates a problem at the end because it's like, oh, nothing is cohesive or unified. I think it's always important to just map out your painting before you really get into the detailed parts. And with this, I go off with saying that I add less water and more paint so that it's more opaque, because with gouache, it is obviously not watercolor. It can act like watercolor depending on how much water you put on, but if you put more paint, it'll be more opaque, which is what I really enjoy about this video. After the wash, I go with a more thicker wash, like I said. And I didn't really know where I was going with this scarf, but I think my whole idea was like not to have just one clear color hue, but variants of different hues within the red or within the scarf. But still being cohesive, so I'm just mixing the colors back and forth. I like to keep my color palette the same, in the sense of like I usually only ever use like green, red, orange, yellow, I guess, or usually green, red, yellow, and I just mix through those three colors, and of course with white. But I never use black because they always tend to make it like more duller with the colors. Same goes with white, but I don't really care. So you see how like I'm like kind of blocking out the scarf with just different shades. I don't know. I just really always liked coloring painting like this. I think it makes it more fun. At least that's my style of it. And the same thing goes again with the jacket, where I'm just blocking in all the colors from my palette. If you want to make your let's say you're using green and red like me, If you want to make the green more or less green and more like muddier, darker, put in some red because they are complementary of each other. And this goes for any color that you want to go for. Use the complementary color of that said hue. So if you want to use blue, put some orange in. If you want to use some yellow, put some purple in. Vice versa. Same goes for whatever. I don't really have a structure for painting per se, but I just go with the flow. I didn't use much of a reference for this. Maybe like a brief reference of like a puffer jacket, but mostly for where to put the wrinkles, not much for the shading and such. I had an idea already because if you live in New York, you see puffers all winter. All of the winter. Different variant puffers, but usually black puffers because for whatever reason that's a New York thing. And so I tend to go back and forth with the light colors and the dark colors. I like to start from the highest value to the lowest value, and then, you know, go back in between to the middle values. I didn't really know where I was going with this cat, to be honest. I kind of low-key struggled, but originally it was supposed to be black, but because of the jacket, I was like, alright, well, it's gonna get lost in the jacket and I'm not trying to do that. So then I just made it a white cat and kind of made it similar to the background, so it kind of seems put together within the whole painting. Now when you have like a white subject, you don't want to make it completely white. You don't want to just slap on that like white paint. You want to make a kind of softer white, you know, because you'll see near the end I'll utilize that highest value for my painting. And again, I just went back with blocking in the colors, going from light to dark to medium. I think this is like the funnest part for me when I'm like painting clothes, because I never really know what I'm doing. I'm just kind of winging it through the entire process. But when I get more opaque throughout the painting, I get to see more of the vision, more of the outcome of said subject. And it turns out really nice. Again, my style, I guess, of painting is usually like a blocking method. Now this is something I like really enjoyed doing because I wanted to do like a plaid, what do you call it? A plaid style with the scarf. So I started with a light wash on the red, and it's important to just do one brush stroke, because if you keep going back and forth, it's going to reactivate the paint underneath, which I didn't want it to do. See how I mean when it kind of dragged on with the red paint, and then I went back with the parts where it overlapped and made it darker, because that's how plaid patterns work. Pattern was the word I was looking for earlier. Then I went over with a yellow, more opaque line, because there's always like lines going on with the plaid, and I just put that in between. I did use a reference. I will be a culprit of it because I wanted to be kind of accurate and not just all willy-nilly. So I just looked up plaid on like Pinterest or Google, and I just kind of made it my own, but at the same time, not. And for these line work, I used a very thin long brush. I don't remember what it's called, like a round detailed brush, but it's not like a tiny one, a long one, so that it helps me control the line. For most of this painting I did use a flat brush. Keep in mind, I use variances of flat brushes from like a small size to like a medium size. I never really go large unless I'm painting large. Then you see me going back with darker tone. This is when I start to add more of the creases for the jacket. So like with clothing, you know, where the creases are hit, like the seams, you tend to see more of these like cinches, you know, these little creases. And what I like to do to like add more emphasis to it is I like to add highlights to the shadow of it, so that it's like, well, highlighting, duh. And because I just didn't find it thick enough of a wash, I added a more darker wash underneath or above all of this. I think I added a more like darker, like made cream, meaning that it's already made like that. I didn't mix it, compared to just a regular schmegular Viridian green hue. And then I just went around and made it more thicker and more darker, so that it doesn't seem as much of a watercolor piece. And if it ever gets sometimes gets lost with the clothing, perhaps you want to add a bit of the complementary color and then have it be like some parts be like a red tone, just so like it like, you know, it's not everything is green. Like it gives you a knowledge of not a knowledge, it gives this illusion of like, oh wow, there's different tones to this jacket. What is up with the lighting? I don't know, but it looks awesome. And then I start to go back with kind of a similar color of the background with like mid-tones. I wouldn't say highlights yet. I guess it is the highlights. And because gouache is not really that dark, it dries kind of like matte and like, I don't know, the black is never black. Well, again, I never use black, but even with black, it's never really like a rich black. So I go over with like a micron pen and I just doodle my way, because line art is like a big thing for me. I really enjoy doing line art. So I kind of put this as my last process, or one of the last steps for my paintings, and really adds like, yeah, I don't know, it just does something, and it just makes it feel more finished in my opinion, especially because I don't really like doing line art with just the paint itself. Again, it's never as dark as I'd like it to be. I love how earlier I said like I don't use black paint, but I do use a black pen. It just makes it really pop out. And this is when I start to go over with that white that I mentioned earlier. Like just a complete white. I think it mixed with some of the paint, so I had to go over it again. But I wanted to add snow onto this subject, so that's what I did. This was like my entire plan for this painting. I just wanted to make it kind of wintry. So I added bits and pieces of the snow with white paint, and I think it really popped out. Especially since the paper itself isn't really like a white, it's kind of like an off-white, warmish white tone piece of paper. The paper I used was Arches watercolor paper, 300 pounds, but there are higher pounds than whatever GSM, whatever it's called, GM. And yeah, they're my go-to brand for my gouache paintings if I'm not using a sketchbook. It's just very good quality paper, and it's somewhat affordable depending on what weight of paper you buy. And I added snowflakes to just end it off, and it was beautiful. I loved it. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope I enlightened y'all in some way. And let me know what anything specifically you want to learn with gouache, and I will put it in my to-do list for videos. I will see you in the next one. Bye bye.